This is kind of this is where we get to the fun because I get to make fun of myself or say I still believe I still believe in Joel Hendry and everything else. 2022. Do you remember what the Canadian starting lineup was versus Croatia at the World Cup?
No, and I don't want to.
Well, I will tell you, good sir. I will tell you, good sir. You know what? Let me show you. Let me show you the life we lived 4 years ago in the winter. All right. This was the starting 11 in that fateful day, right? You had in goal, you had Milan Borjan. Ah, good name that. Kamal Miller, Stephen Vittoria, Alistair Johnston. He's a right back. Stop playing him as a center back. In the middle, you had Alfonso Davies as a wing back, Stefan Eustachio, who was injured but gutted it through, Atiba Hutchinson, the legend himself, Richie Larea. Then up top, you had Tejan Buchanan, Kyle Laren, Joe David. And this was the game where we started with such hope, and then Kamaric happened and Perisic happened too, and it was painful. But I bring this up because after that World Cup, I am someone who notoriously, like I want this to be very clear, I don't celebrate things. I'm that terrible person who's like, once something is done, on to the next. So I never really enjoyed the World Cup because while the World Cup was happening, I was like, okay, who's going to be my team for like 2026? And they're like, who do we need to come through? Who are the names we're excited about? Oh, we could see this player, we can see that player. And I remember what my lineup for 2026 was. And what we're going to do today is we're going to look at what we thought the 2026 lineup would look like versus what it's looking like now. Players we were high on, players that we had forgotten about, other things of that nature. And we want to go through that there. So, Lane, you had fun going back through that 2022 cut list. The overall list. There were names that we've forgot were things, but hey, names were there. What was I think your favorite name from looking at that roster and saying, I forgot about this player? Like, what was the name that you forgot about 4 years ago? Was a big thing in Canada soccer for you?
There's a few. Probably Io Akinola, um, Jaden Nelson, Charles Andreas Brim. Like, there's some names that truly stand out in there. Like, you even see um, Daniil Henry back then when he just didn't make that squad. Like, there was so many names. Jason Lutweiler. Like, some of the names just travel you back in time. Like, the difference between the player pool we're talking about being cut now compared to players who were cut before. We're talking player in Oldham Athletic or a
Mm.
player who was even unattached FC. We had a multiple players at unattached FC. We haven't even had to talk about that since 2021. How refreshing does that feel? But like it is so good to see the difference in player pool now. No offense to the Tyler Pastors of the world, the Harry Paytons of the world back then, because they were good for the national team when they're there, but now it is such a night and day difference to the players who are cut now and the players we're talking about now. Now we're talking about, does a player in Liga make it? Does a player in the championship make it? Unlike a player who is without a club or a player who's coming off a major injury. Like, it's just mind blowing to see the difference in the players who are cut.
It's a different life we were living, but it's also somewhat similar to the life. There's familiarity in the familiar names, and I'm pulling up that roster right here to talk about it because it's an interesting thing to think about. We had goalkeepers: Dane St. Clair, Alistair Johnston. Goalkeepers. You had here are the players: Dane St. Clair, Alistair Johnston, Sam Adekubi, Kamal Miller, Stephen Vittoria, Sam Piet, Stephen Eustachio, Liam Fraser and Liam Miller, the Liam boys. We could have had it all, Wayne. We could have had it all. Cavallini is your nine. Hoylett, Tejan Buchanan, Ike Ugbo. Came on for a minute. That's a story. Came on for a minute. Atiba Hutchinson, Mark Anthony, K, Return of the Mac, not returned. Ishmael Kone, James Pantemis, he comes in because remember, Kaipo breaks his leg in the MLS finals, and I think he should have started at least one game in that World Cup, but I digress. Kyle Laren, Milan, Davies was coming off of myocarditis and was starting to play finally. Liam Miller, David Wotherspoon. You remember the spoon? You remember the cut the chop back spoon? Listen, memories. Memories were here. Derek Cornelius, who I feel made every roster in 2022 and never played. He played in Jamaica the one time and then never. That was like my one going back
The
to
worst
2023.
conditions.
That was no. We're not going to complain about conditions here. We're Canadian. We don't. We've grown from this. Okay, we're mature
Have
now.
we?
We don't complain about conditions. He played in Jamaica, but I remember losing my mind over Derek Cornelius being a healthy center back and never playing him, and he was always just there. And at that point, I was like, if you're not going to play him, go bring someone else, please. Like, because the kid was talented, and hey, guess what? A few years later, the kid is talented. Free kick versus Wales. I see the outs. I see the outs. But
Okay, but if we're going to talk about conditions, I think we got to ask Liam Miller what he thinks about that under John Herdman.
Liam Miller was that era was basically players who like, can you fit in a 3-5-2? Okay. Can you not? Okay. Because if you're a winger in that, you're either a striker or you better hope you're defensively sound because they need that cover. They needed that cover. But that roster, that it brings back, and there were names that we were surprised didn't make it, right? Scott Kennedy didn't make it, who then was like a pairing of Scott Kennedy and Kamal Miller to me was like, oh, that's the future of the center backs for Canada. Easy. That's a spoiler, by the way. That's on my list. Somewhere there. But you also had in 2022, you had the U20s that happened. And I was one who was like, okay, let's look at that U20 list. And that had some lists, right? Greta Zuhir. You had Justin Smith. You had a young Jesse Costa there. A young Jesse Costa. You had that's where we met Thiago Coimbra on his way to Europe that year. That's the team that drew Cuba or lost to Cuba and then lost to Guatemala. And since then, us and Guatemala have been nothing but friends, and there's never been any anger or animosity between us ever since. We've always been cool. But I bring this up. We know what our starting lineups were, but now we have to start talking about what our starting 11s we thought would be into that year. So, since you are the guest, Slade, I will make you go first because I'm a good host. I'm a good host. I like to give my guests some opportunities to come through. But back in 2023, what was your team of the future slash team of 2026 you were hoping to see for Canada at this World Cup? You give me the formation and give me all the information.
Well, I don't have a visual picture unlike you, but we can explain it, you know? So
Oh,
I know
we'll
yours
make it.
started with the four in the back. I went with the typical John Herdman three in the back because I expected Herdman to still be here come 2026 with no debacles, but that all changed. But I had the three in the back. So with the
Okay.
goalkeeper. I think the goalkeeper is kind of self-explanatory, and most people probably got that right, or we're thinking we got that right come 2026. Maxime Crepeau. Like, without the leg break, like you said, he was probably starting at the 2022 World Cup in our minds, you and me, at least one game, or if that third game, if we're mathematically out, then he at second place gets one game at minimum, like you see what most teams at the World Cup do. If they're
Yeah.
completely eliminated, they give the second choice goalkeeper that charity last match. And that would have been Maxime Crepeau, and then the pathway to start in 2026. I just feel like most people probably would have projected Max to be starting in 2026. I'm assuming that's one we are similar on. And then my back three, this is a bit crazy, but I had Alistair Johnson as the right-sided center back, which I hate saying, but in that three in the back, you need that right-footed center back. And back then, we only had Joel Waterman and Alistair Johnston. And
Mm.
Alistair was never a right-sided center back, and I'll always remember that. But under John Herdman, Alistair played that role, and he was almost a lock at right-sided center back under John Herdman. And his age, his development in the position under Herdman, it looked like he was going to be a lock there for years. So that's who I had at right center back. Down the middle is someone that we're probably going to be similar with in our back lines is Kamal Miller. That center back player pool was probably our most depressing or our weakest in the squad at that time. Like we were all panicking at who's going to come through next, who's going to be our next center back for 2026. What are we going to do? Now you look at it, it's our best position within the squad, and it's mind blowing to see the recruitment, the development at that role. But Kamal was my central center back, and at left side, there you go. Now I can keep up. But at left side of center back, I had Scott Kennedy. Like you said, it was the hype around him coming in. I'm pretty sure he was at Jan Regensburg around then. If that sounds right, because he was bouncing around the random tiers of Germany and the Baltic regions for so long. So he would have been my left side center back at the time. I don't remember how old he was, but he wasn't getting up there in age. And now he's still playing his football, I think the second tier of Austria right now, if my memory is
I
correct.
think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's done that for a little while, but he's always showed signs, and then he's been hit by big injuries or he's had a mistake in him. But at that time, like we said, the depth of that role just wasn't good enough. So you kind of just felt like he was going to be starting for Canada in that three in the back. And when we're playing with three center backs, we just didn't have the depth for it, which was always confusing to me why Herdman went with that formation. But right and left midfield is going to be pretty self-explanatory. It's Alfonso Davies and Tajon Buchanan. I would have liked to go Richie Larea back then, which was someone I was leaning to back then, but Herdman was starting to transition a bit more to Buchanan back then. I had the feeling he was going to develop more, and it suited his role a little bit more when you had Johnston, who could still overlap a little bit. So that's kind of how I felt it would go, but it could have been Larea or Buchanan for me. And in that midfield three, I mean, you couldn't have Atiba Hutchinson there anymore. There was no way Piet was still going to be starting for Canada or as a substitute for us come 2026. So then I had Stefan Eustachio, Ismail Kone, and someone who just missed out on that 2022 squad, or not really just missed out, but was kind of on the bubble in Mathieu Choinière. He would have been my third midfielder back at CF Montreal at the time. I'm pretty sure he was still at. Our players have bounced around at so many different clubs that it's hard to keep up with anymore. But Stefan Eustachio, Mathieu Choinière, Ismail Kone would have been my midfield three under John Herdman. And three players who could realistically start for Canada if John Herdman was still the manager actually right now. So it's kind of an okay guess, I guess. But up
Fair.
top, I would have gone plain, simple, vanilla, Jonathan David, Kyle Larin. Like at the time, there was no Promise David to be seen. There was no Tani Oluwase to be seen. Jason Russell Rowe was in and around it. And the only other guy who I had in my debate in my head was Charles Andres Brim. I was a huge fan of him. I really liked what he was doing. And he was a player who was playing in the Eredivisie. And even now, he is scoring goals, playing well in the Eredivisie, having a decent season. If that was the season he was having back then, he would have been a legitimate conversation to be the third number 9 in this squad. But it just shows how much his national team has come from where we are to now. But it's a crazy lineup to look at from 2022 to now.
No, that's fair. And again, for those of you who are here, this is what we thought. We made predictions of what we thought the starting 11 for 2026 would be back in 2023. And this is what that is. We're not saying should be the lineup, though I won't lie. Bring back Scott Kennedy. Yeah, he's at Kassupen in Belgium right now. He's got a goal. Man's got a goal. So, hey, I remember watching him and being like, "Yo, he's big, but he can move." He's not like what we had in Stephen Vittoria, where it was just, hey, he stay at home, he'll get that yellow card to stop a break, but he's going to be defensively sound. That's it. The man could move. He's like, this could be like that center back who just kind of shows up, and then we realize, oh, he's fast. And then we met Moise Bombito, like, that's fast too. That's fast. The man's got quickness too. Oh, my bad. But no, that's a good lineup. Mine was I had two, and I'm going
That doesn't
to,
surprise me.
well, because there was one where I was higher, and when I realized, I remember I was higher on other people at that point, and I wasn't sure who could have made what at what point. But Let's throw this up. So this was mine. So you have to remember this. I think this is the more both have players that I was a little bit higher on or not. So in goalkeeper, I had Owen Goodman. You have to remember back in 2022, he had played some camps. We thought for sure like he was going to come to Canada, and then we went through the entire saga of is he a citizen or is he not? Passports not included. But I in 2022 it was like Owen Goodman's our goalkeeper of the future, or it's Dane St. Clair. I went with Owen because I figured at a higher level he could do well. I didn't foresee Dane having one of the best goalkeepers in MLS for the last few years running, and being in that conversation does carry a lot. I went to a back four because I was all about the 4-2-3-1 overlap. It was where I wanted to live. Davies as your left back, self-explanatory. Scott Kennedy was listen. We have to remember, I was excited about Scott Kennedy back then. Like that was a name. I was like, oh, look at this man could move. And Kamal Miller, by no means is this like sometimes you forget when players are around other players how they look and they look better. Like Kamal Miller looked like an active center back, and he still is. I think sometimes with his awareness, he gets beat on some 1-2s, and then sometimes his lack of spatial awareness gets him. But when we had possession in CONCACAF, and you see Kamal Miller, one armed, one wrist wrapped, making a pass, darting into the middle, like, yo, give me some of this, man. Give me some of this, man, in this. Alistair Johnson as a right back, I think that man deserved to be in that. Here's where it got controversial. I was excited for Kone. I was moving people off lists. I was like, okay, for the next one, I need this. I was like, Stephen Eustachio was going to be my Jonathan Osorio of 2026, and I was high on Justin Smith. All right, Justin Smith, who was at Nice, who had a good season at Espanyol, and right now is up and down for minutes. He just came from that U20 side where, yes, he's known as he missed the Panenka by hitting it off the crossbar in the U20s. Again, youth tournaments where there's no success. I've never met them, never met them, but he was going to be my six. Kone was going to be my eight, and then Joe David was going to be my 10. Tejan on the right side, and then I was high on Jaden Nelson. Nelson was just starting to get some minutes, but was about to move to Europe for a year and a half, 2 years for him. And I was high on Jaden Nelson back in 2023. I was excited for him to come through. And then I had Daniel Jebbison. Remember, this is 2022. Like the man just came from scoring as a 17-year-old in the Prem. We were like, yo, this Eddie Canadian, man, you put him with those. That's your nine. We don't have a real 10. Joe David can be our 10. That worked for it. This was lineup number one. And that was the easiest one, right? That was easy lineup number one. The second one, which I was kind of going back and forth with, it's really simple and similar to that. Same back five. Only difference is a Stacchio. And then there I had Luca Kolyosho as a left winger because, again, whoa, what's a friendly without a work stoppage, right? Like everyone has those, right? Right, like everyone has a friendly that's a work stoppage. So everyone does that. So I thought I was high. I thought for sure in 2026 you'd have Daniel Jebbison as your starting nine for Canada, and then you'd have. I thought they got him in. I'm like, yo, look, we brought him in for a camp. The left wing is open, and that was the other thing. That year, that's when I changed my tone a lot and said, hey, Davies has to be your fullback. Because if you have a player like Kolyosho there, then let him be the winger, and then you can have Davies as your fullback. Then that overlap will be there. And then you have Alistair and Tejan on the other side, and then Scott Kennedy and Kamal Miller. It's crazy looking at it now. We see what we assume the starting 11 will be. Outside of right now, the only lock that we have is Davies as your fullback, as your left back. Everything else is completely wrong in the back line, right? Right. Derek Cornelius, right?
Alistair
Cornelius,
Johnson lock.
go.
Alistair Johnson would be a lock.
I think he should be a lock. I can entertain the conversations with if you want to put Nico Segur there, or if you want to go, and be like, well, he's played so well for a year. Richie should start at the right back. As long as I have one that's fresh on the bench. I don't want a lineup where all three of our fullbacks that we play are starting. So that's translation. No, stop Davies at the left mid. I'm not living that life. I cannot. But yeah, if you say that, like look at the center backs. Kamal Miller was, we thought, okay, that's the building block, and then we go from there, right? And then Kamal Miller is on the bubble to make the squad. He's not even like, to
It's
me,
not even
he's
on
on
my
the
bubble.
he's not on some people's bubbles, but I mean, look at the depth at center back. We went from having, okay, Scott Kennedy and Kamal Miller to now you have Derek Cornelius, Moise Bombito when healthy, Luke DeFugel, who is older, wiser beyond his years, Alfie Jones, fresh Alfie Jones, Joel Waterman, Jamie Knight LaBelle, and then you get to Kamal Miller. That would, if you told me that in 6 years, that would have been wild, but I would have been excited for that. That would have been like, hey, that's development. The midfield, I think we all kind of looked at it the same way. Kone starting, Stakio starting, um, Tejan starting. It was just the left and who you're starting nine. Back in 23, I have friends who can quote me on this. I was like, okay, if we're gonna move people, I would love for Laren to be my first nine off the bench if something's not working, because then you have like Jebison, and then you have David, and then you have Laren coming off the bench if something's not working. Now look at us. We got Jebison is kind of in the squad, but on the bubble. You got so many Davids, you don't know what to do with them. You got a Tanny who's got the pace. Looking where we were 4 years ago to where we are today, it's both a good reminder that, hey, development comes out of different places, right? We got players coming from MLS drafts. We got players coming from European academies, right? We have players who have played for us at youth, and we have other players who never had the opportunity to play for us, but they came in. And we got players who found out that someone's aunt's mother's cousin is got the maple in the blood, so let's bring in Alfie Jones. All respect to Alfie Jones. I'm sure it's not that complicated, but look at where we were to where we are now, and I think that's what makes it exciting, and that's what makes it great.